In the Old Testament books of Samuel, we find the stories of King David. We tend to remember David based on what is said about him in the book of Acts, when he's called a man after God's own heart. One of my favorite things about this man after God's own heart is that he isn't without failure. I don't wish failure on him out of jealousy or revenge. I appreciate it because it gives me hope for my own life. I desire to be a man after God's own heart. But I'm not a man without failure. None of us are. Ryan, Sarah walks into this marriage with failures of the past and many that will come. Sarah, Ryan comes to this marriage with faults and failures and many more that will surface. Yet you come together in your brokenness with failures in tow, saying that your love for one another is worth taking the other, even with your faults and failures. In 2 Samuel 6, we enter into an episode in David's life with his wife Michal, who is the daughter of Saul. David has gone with some of his men to bring the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem, the new capital. It was a great celebration for all of the people. And here's a piece of that story. It says, David and all the people of Israel brought up the Ark of the Lord with shouts of joy and the blowing of ram's horns. But as the Ark of the Lord entered the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked down from her window. When she saw King David leaping and dancing before God, she was filled with contempt for him. They brought the Ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the special tent David had prepared for it. And David sacrificed burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord. When he had finished his sacrifices, David blessed the people in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies. Then he gave every Israelite man and every woman in the crowd a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins. Then all the people returned to their homes. When David returned home to bless his own family, Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet him. She said in disgust, "How distinguished the king of Israel looked today, shamelessly exposing himself to the servant girls, like any vulgar person might do." David retorted to Michal, "I was dancing before the Lord, who chose me above your father and all his family. He appointed me as the leader of Israel, the people of the Lord. So I celebrate before the Lord. Yes, and I am willing to look even more foolish than this, even to be humiliated in my own eyes. But those servant girls you mentioned will indeed think I am distinguished." So Michal, the daughter of Saul, remained childless throughout her entire life. David had tried before to bring the ark to Jerusalem, but God wouldn't allow it. Now God had finally allowed it, and David had reason to celebrate. He praised God for this amazing blessing. Everyone was celebrating together. Everyone except David's wife, Michal. It says she was filled with contempt for him. Some translations say that she hated him in her heart. This is his wife. What's happened to them? 1 Samuel 18 says Saul's daughter Michal had fallen in love with David. Things seem to have started so well. So where did they fall off track? Ryan, Sarah, how can you avoid some of those same pitfalls? We don't get a lot of information between the two of them falling in love and our hatred of him. But I refuse to believe the problems we see here happened all of a sudden. Something went wrong long before this episode. Something happened that broke Michal's heart and ruined her love for her husband. Let me share two things from the story that I noticed. First, be foolish. Be foolish about your love for God. When Michal criticized David for celebrating, he probably wasn't doing anything wrong, even though Michal makes it sound like he was naked with other women. He was celebrating before God. He wasn't naked, but was wearing a linen robe that the priest wore. He had removed his kingly clothes. He had removed his robe. He had humbled himself to honor God. And Michal wasn't comfortable with that. David said, "I'm willing to act like a fool in order to show my joy in the Lord." Continue to daily fall more and more foolishly in love with your God. He has blessed you in your individual lives. He He has blessed you with your families. He has blessed you with allowing you the opportunity to live together in love forever. Celebrate that. Celebrate foolishly that God has called you out to be His disciples. Celebrate foolishly that God is using you to impact lives and will continue to use you to show His love to others. As a couple, first and foremost, nurture your relationship with Christ. Allow nothing to stand in the way of that. As David continued to pursue and worship God, Michal didn't. Somewhere along the way, she stopped following and celebrating the God that had blessed her. Grow together in your love for Christ, and your love for one another will grow. The grace you show one another will grow. The forgiveness you show one another will grow. You will grow in mercy and patience and humility. Your relationship with one another will be strengthened, and your relationship with others will be strengthened. Second lesson from the story: be foolish about your love for one another. Common response is, when you're wronged, seek revenge. But foolish love says forgive, even when it hurts. Common response is, when things get difficult, leave and find something better. But foolish love says that you will fight through the hard times and stay together. Love one another foolishly. No other human relationship will ever be as important as this one. Not the relationship with your parents, not the relationship with your best friend or your siblings. There is no other human relationship more important than this one. Not even the relationship with your future children. Now, all of these are important. You'll need the support systems of your parents and your friends. You'll need the love of others in your life. The relationships you'll one day have with your children will be crucial to who they grow to be. But never let any relationship overshadow or overpower the relationship you have with one another. Let nothing be more important than that, other than your relationship with God. Celebrate when the other celebrates. Ryan, when you're exhausted from a long day, and Sarah shares a story with you of a child she's worked with for weeks, who finally gained the ability to say just one word he couldn't pronounce before. Celebrate with her. Sarah, when Ryan is excited about some new toy or gadget or a great day at the parlor or the fire department, celebrate with him. Celebrate those things, not because they mean something to you necessarily, but because the person you love means something to you, and it's important to them. In the story, Michal was unwilling to celebrate when David was celebrating. She was unwilling to lay herself aside for the sake of her husband. Obviously, throughout this story, Michal plays the bad guy. But I don't believe David is without fault. Michal's feelings are real. It doesn't matter if they're rational or valid. She's hurting. Sarah, there'll be days that Ryan is hurting or depressed for no good reason. Ryan, there will be days that you have crushed Sarah without even knowing you've done anything wrong. David was unwilling to stop his own celebrating to care for the needs of his wife. He was more concerned with his own wants and desires than hers. Marriage is about laying yourself aside for the sake of the person that you love. Ryan and Sarah, healthy marriages require taking the blame sometimes, even when it isn't your fault. God is committed to restoring or repairing relationships. I truly believe that God's idea with Michal and David would have been for them to heal their heartaches and walk together again in love. Instead, we're told that she never had children, and we're given the idea that it's because David refused to be